This video presents the most important social and political events that unfolded in Athens from the 7th century BC to the beginning of the Athenian democracy in 449 BC, along with the personalities involved in the process. Athenian democracy was a unique model of political organization, and 2,500 years on, it is still a wonderful and functional model of direct democracy. The participation of all citizens of Athens, the democratic institutions, and the freedom of expression, made the city the biggest scientific and cultural center of that period. It also became the home of the most famous ancient Greek philosophers, scientists, poets, and artists like Plato, Socrates, Aeschylus, and Sophocles. The foundations of the Athenian democracy laid by Cleisthenes followed the path set by Solon a few years before. The maturation of this new concept of governance lasted about 200 years, from 700 BC to 449 BC. It was a process that emerged through tyranny, social unrest, and intellectual rise. Seventh century BC. The kingdom had declined and the Athenian state was evolving into an aristocratic one. Draco gave political rights to a wider portion of Athenians and codified the law by providing severe penalties for violators. This period was also characterized by great social unrest due to the high debts of farmers. Draco was the first legislator of Athens. He replaced the prevailing system of oral law with written law to be enforced by a court of law. He was the first democratic legislator requested by the citizens of Athens to be a lawgiver for the city, but the citizens had not expected that Draco would establish such severe laws. For example, any debtor whose status was lower than that of his creditor was forced into slavery. Nowadays, the adjective draconian is used to express hardness, both in Greek and English languages. 6th century BC. Solon and his reforms smoothed out social unrest and opened the way for the formation of a democratic state. Solon was an Athenian statesman, lawmaker, and poet. He is remembered particularly for his efforts to legislate against the political, economic, and moral decline in archaic Athens. For many historians, his reforms failed in the short term. Nowadays, is credited with having laid the foundations for Athenian democracy that was completed by Cleisthenes and Pericles. During this century, tyrant Pisistratus came to power and contributed to the economic and spiritual progress of the city. Pisistratus was a ruler of ancient Athens between 561 and 527 BC. His unification of Attica, along with economic and cultural improvements, laid the groundwork for the later preeminence of Athens in ancient Greece. His legacy lies primarily in his institution of the Panathenaic festival. While in power, he did not hesitate to confront the aristocracy of the city and reduce their privileges, confiscating their lands and giving them to the poor. Pisistratus funded many religious and artistic programs, in order to improve the economy and spread the wealth among the citizens of Athens. In his time, the epics of Homer, Iliad and Odyssey were written, and the first large temple of the goddess Athena, today named by the archaeologists as the primary Parthenon, was built. Almost 100 years later, the Parthenon was to be erected on the foundations of this temple. 527 BC. Pisistratus died, and his sons Hippias and Hipparchus took over. 514 BC, Hipparchus was assassinated by Harmodius and Aristotle, who went down in history as the Tyrannicides. 510 BC, the fall of tyranny. The term Tyrannicides is attributed to Harmodius and Aristotle, two lovers in ancient Athens who murdered in the summer of 514 BC Hipparchus, brother of the tyrant Hippias, due to personal revenge and sexual rivalry. After the establishment of democracy, the Athenians honored them as the Tyrannicides, and erected a group of statues made of bronze in the cultural and economic center of the city, the Agora. After the defeat of the Greek forces in the naval battle of Artemisium and the Spartans in the Battle of Thermopylae, the statue, work of the sculptor Antenor, was taken by the Persians during their invasion in Athens in 480 BC. 508 to 507 BC. Cleisthenes laid the foundations of Athenian democracy with his radical reforms. Cleisthenes was born in 570 BC. He was a statesman, the founder of Athenian democracy, and a lord of Athens from 525 to 524 BC. Cleisthenes successfully allied with the popular assembly against the nobles and imposed democratic reform. For most historians, the most important innovation of Cleisthenes was that he gave wider political responsibility to the citizens of Athens, introducing the 10 tribes of Attica to take the place of the 4 Ionic blood tribes. He also increased the members of the Council of 400, which was introduced according to Aristotle by Draco or according to Plutarch by Solon, to 500 members. He also introduced the concept of isonomia, where all citizens were equal. 449 BC. The democratic state was completed with the reforms of Pericles and Ephialtes. Athens became the cultural center of the developed world, and the grand investment program of Pericles began. Ephialtes was an Athenian politician and an early leader of the democratic movement. In the late 460s BC, he oversaw reforms that diminished the power of the Areopagus, a traditional bastion of conservatism, and which are considered by many modern historians to mark the beginning of the radical democracy for which Athens would become famous. These reforms included the control of officeholders and the judicial functions in state trials. He introduced pay for public officeholders, reduced the property qualifications for holding a public office, and created a new definition of citizenship. Ephialtes, however, would not live to participate in this new form of government for long. In 461 BC, he was assassinated, probably at the instigation of resentful oligarchs, and the political leadership of Athens passed to his deputy, Pericles. Pericles was a prominent statesman and general of Athens during the Golden Age of Athens. His name in Greek means surrounded by glory. So profound was his influence that the period in which he led Athens has been called the Golden Age of Pericles. His influence on Athenian society was so great that Thucydides called him the first citizen of Athens. Pericles led the Delian League forward to form the Athenian Alliance and guided his countrymen during the first 2 years of the Peloponnesian War. He promoted the arts, literature, and philosophy, and gave freedom to some of the most inspired writers and thinkers of his time. During the Golden Age of Pericles, Athens blossomed as a center of education, art, culture, and democracy of the ancient world. Artists, sculptors and architects, poets, playwrights and philosophers, all found Athens an exciting and enlivening atmosphere for their work. Impact of the new governance model on the city-state of Athens. The democracy resulted in the emergence of the most intelligent and inventive leaders like Miltiades, Themistocles, and Aristides. A natural consequence of the economic, political, and cultural development of the city was its hegemony over the other developed Greek city-states like Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes, and the military victory over the Persian Empire after the defeat of the Persians in the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC, the naval Battle of Salamis in 480 BC, and the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC. The Persians were people located from Asia to the Mediterranean. It was the biggest empire in ancient times with a massive army. In 499 BC, the Greek city-states of Ionia rebelled against Persia and King Darius. Athens and Eretria sent aid to the rebels. Darius then invaded Greece and punished Eretria and Athens. In 490 BC, Eretria was sacked and burned by the Persians. In the same year, the Athenian forces, aided by the army of Plataea, prevailed the Persian forces in Marathon. The Persian Empire lasted from approximately 559 BC to 331 BC, and began to decline under the reign of Xerxes. Xerxes depleted the royal treasury with an unsuccessful second campaign to invade Greece, and the defeats in the Battle of Salamis and the Battle of Plataea. Persia was eventually conquered by Alexander the Great in 334 BC. The Athenian Alliance. In 479 BC, the Greeks had successfully overcome the invasion of the Persians with their military victories in the Persian Wars. After these victories and the liberation of the occupied Greek city-states, the trade routes of the Aegean and the Mediterranean Sea were again available. These routes had previously been dominated by the Phoenicians, allies of the defeated Persians. The Phoenicians were an ancient civilization composed of independent city-states which lay along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, stretching through what is now Syria, Lebanon, and northern Israel. The Phoenicians were a great maritime people, known for their mighty ships. The city of Tyre and the city of Sidon are the most powerful states in Phoenicia. In 478/7 BC, on the initiative of the Athenian general Aristides, Athens united most Greek city-states, and the First Athenian Alliance was formed. It was also known as the Delian Alliance or Delian Union. The military successes of the alliance, especially under the command of General Cimon, son of Miltiades, liberated all the Greek cities of Asia Minor from the Persians. The Greek cities participating equally in the alliance were the city-states of Evia, Chalkis and Eretria, the cities of Chalkidiki, the city-states of Cyclades, Thasos, Chios, Mytilene, Locrida, Methone, Maronia, and most of the cities in Ionia and Marmara. The city-states retained their independence and each had one vote in conferences that were held on the island of Delos. The island of Delos, next to Mykonos, near the center of the Cyclades, is one of the most important mythological, historical, and archaeological sites in Greece. The excavations in the island are among the most extensive in the Mediterranean. Ongoing work takes place under the direction of the French school at Athens, and many of the artifacts found are on display at the Archaeological Museum of Delos and the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. The island had a position as a holy sanctuary, as it was the birthplace of Apollo and Artemis. The alliance treasury was kept here. The initial allied contribution of each member of the alliance was 460 Attic talents per year. The Attic talent was 6,000 Attic drachmas, and the most precious coin in the 5th century BC. With 1 talent you could pay a shipyard to build a trireme, the most advantaged warship of ancient Greece, or to pay a trireme crew of 200 rowers for a month's worth of work. With the creation of the Athenian Alliance, the city of Athens assumed a leading role. Within a few years, Athens had become the absolute ruler and manager of the alliance's financial resources. A natural consequence of the economic development of Athens was its hegemony over the other Greek city-states like Eretria, Chalkis, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes. During the Pericles period, along with the cultural growth of the city, this role was strengthened and the alliance was transformed into an Athenian hegemony. The transfer of the treasury from Delos to Athens in 454 BC played an important role in this change. From that year, with the contributions of each member increased, Athens began using the funds of the alliance at will. Soon, a huge amount of wealth accumulated. Pericles used these abundant resources and began the construction of the Acropolis monuments. This video presents the structure of the Athenian democracy. You will learn the definition of citizenship in ancient Athens and the basic characteristics of the political institutions. The analysis of this unique model of political organization is based on the Constitution of the Athenians, an ancient text which was created by the school of Aristotle. That work provided us with a detailed rundown of the structure of Athens' government. Athenian citizens. The word democracy derives from the Greek words demos, which means people, and kratos, which means power. Therefore, democracy means the power of the people. The beating heart of Athenian democracy was the Athenian citizens. Only they had political rights, could hold a public office, vote, and participate in the political institutions. But who were they? During the golden age of Pericles, the population of Attica was more than 300,000 people, including the Athenians, the metics who were the foreign residents, and the slaves who were the workforce and the lowest class of the Athenian society. The Athenians were the men and women from Athens. To be an Athenian citizen, you needed 3 qualifications. Both your parents had to be from Athens, to be at least 20 years old, and of course, to be a male. In the 5th century BC, when the Athenian democracy was at its peak, the citizens of the city were between 30,000 to 60,000 people. Popular Assembly. The Popular Assembly was the central political institution of the state directly connected with the Athenian citizens. The assembly's members were not elected but attended by right when they choose. Here, the Athenian citizens were gathering to address issues of importance like laws, treaties, decrees, or deciding to go to war. In a session of the assembly, the speakers would make speeches for or against a position. Then the voting process was taking place usually by show of hands. In some cases, the voting process used white and black stones, white for yes and black for no. Each voter tossed one of these into a large clay jar, which was afterwards cracked open for the counting of the ballots. The Popular Assembly decided also on the ostracism of a citizen. Ostracism was a political practice whereby an Athenian citizen could be banished from the city for 10 years. Any Athenian citizen could write another citizen's name on a piece of pottery called ostracon, and when a sufficiently large number of them wrote the same name, the ostracized man had 10 days to leave Attica. From excavations in the Acropolis, archaeologists have found ostracons with the names of important and famous Athenians like Pericles, the famous statesman, Cimon, the general and military genius who was also the son of Miltiades who led the Athenians in the Battle of Marathon, and Aristides, the general who established the Delian League. According to Aristotle, this practice was introduced by Cleisthenes, an Athenian legislator who is considered by many historians that he laid the foundations of the Athenian democracy. Popular Tribunal of Heliaea. The Popular Tribunal of Heliaea was a court responsible to examine the legality of the decrees and treaties and to inspect the decisions of the city. It consisted of 6,000 Athenian citizens, elected annually by lot, called heliasts. Each member of Heliaea could denounce anything considered harmful to the city. The heliasts were the legislators who voted on laws and the juries. The jurors had to take an oath when attending a trial, and their number on a trial depended on the type of lawsuit. Private lawsuits were heard by 201 or 401 jurors depending on the amount of money at stake, while public prosecutions were heard by juries of 501 or more. Decisions were made by voting, without any time set aside for deliberation. Payment for jurors was introduced most likely by Pericles, a feature described by Aristotle as fundamental to radical democracy. Lords. The lords were initially 3 powerful officeholders from noble families who governed the city. The reforms of Cleisthenes increased the lords from 3 to 9 and removed their influence over the Athenian state. They were elected by lot by the Popular Assembly for 1 year, They presided over the popular tribunal of Ephialtes in family affairs and organized the city's celebrations. By the time of Pericles, they were set aside as an office and had only ritual duties. Council of Areopagus. The Council of Areopagus was the criminal court of the city and settled the homicides. The board of the council consisted of 150 lifelong members. These members were called Areopagites, and all were retired lords. In the early days of the Athenian state, the Council of Areopagus had great power, which held even after Cleisthenes' reforms. However, by the time of Pericles, dramatically lost its power and was set aside. The name of the council comes from the rocky hill northwest of the Athenian Acropolis, the Areopagus Hill. According to mythology, at this hill god Ares was tried by the Olympian gods for the murder of one of Poseidon's sons. Council of 500. The Council of 500 was an official body with an administrative and supervisory role. It was formed by 500 Athenian citizens elected by lot called Ephialtes, 50 from each of the 10 tribes of Attica. The 500 representatives served annually. 50 of them were called Prytanes, and were the executives of the council. 9 served as chairmen during the sessions, and were elected by the 450 non-Prytanes. The epistats, elected by lot from the Prytanes, were responsible for the official documents of the city. 10 members formed the committee where any Athenian citizen could submit a decree or a law proposal. The main responsibility of the council was to draft the deliberations and the resolutions that were going to be voted by the popular assembly. The council collaborated, guided, and supervised all public officials and met daily in the Athenian Agora. Magistracies. In the Athenian democracy were 2 general categories of magistracies, the military and the civil. The military magistracies are elected by lot by the popular assembly, and they commanded the army. They were categorized into 4 military ranks. The 10 generals commanded the army and navy, and took all the final decisions. Next to the hierarchy were the 10 taxiarchs, who commanded the infantry, the 10 hipparchs, who commanded the cavalry, and the 10 phylarchs, who commanded the cavalry of each tribe of the city in battle. The military magistracies also presided over the popular tribunal of Ephialtes in military matters. The civil magistracies were elected by the citizens or the popular assembly by lot or the rise of hands, and among others were responsible for the treasury of the city. Criticism. The Athenians developed a form of government that helped their society function efficiently. Their government was based on each and every Athenian citizen and on principles and beliefs that have influenced our systems of democratic government today. However, democracy has had many critics in ancient times by personalities like Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Their main concern was that the common people were not necessarily the right people to rule and were likely to make huge mistakes from lack of knowledge in matters crucial to the city. In our days, democracy is a very popular concept and is adopted by many countries of the world as the most suitable model of governance. George Grote, an English political and classical historian, argued in his work History of Greece that only by giving every citizen the vote would people ensure that the state would be run in the general interest. Historian Rafflaub claimed that democracy in ancient Athens was a unique and truly revolutionary system, and Mark Cartwright, a history writer from Italy, characterized democracy as the greatest and most enduring legacy of ancient Greece. What do you think? This video presents the rise and fall of the Athenian Empire. Ancient Athens dominated the ancient world in the 5th century BC, and became the philosophical, scientific, and artistic center of the developed world. How did Athens accomplish that? and what stopped the development of the city? Let's find out. The democracy and the alliance. There were two main reasons that led to the development and domination of Athens in the 5th century BC. The first was the new model of state governance, the democracy, which was inspired and first applied in ancient Athens. The second was the Athenian Alliance, which turned the city into the undisputed ruler of Greece. The governance model. Athenian democracy was a unique model of political organization, and 2,500 years on, it is still a wonderful and functional model of direct democracy. You can learn more about this unique model of governance and the political institutions of the city-state of Athens in the video The Athenian Democracy Explained, link in the description of the video. The participation of all citizens of Athens, the democratic institutions, and the freedom of expression made the city the biggest scientific and cultural center of that period. It also became the home of the most famous ancient Greek philosophers, scientists, poets, and artists like Plato, Socrates, Aeschylus, and Sophocles. The foundations of the Athenian democracy laid by Cleisthenes followed the path set by Solon a few years before. The maturation of this new concept of governance lasted about 200 years. It was a process that emerged through tyranny, social unrest, and intellectual rise. You can find more on that period in the video The Maturation of the Athenian Democracy, link in the description of the video. The democracy resulted in the emergence of the most intelligent and inventive leaders like Miltiades, Themistocles, Aristides, Cimon, and Pericles. A natural consequence of the economic, political, and cultural development of Athens was its hegemony over the other developed Greek city-states like Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes, and the military victory over the Persian Empire after the defeat of the Persians in the Battle of Marathon, 490 BC, the naval Battle of Salamis, 480 BC, and the Battle of Plataea, 479 BC. The Athenian Alliance. After the defeats of the Persians and the liberation of the occupied Greek city-states, Athens enjoyed strong economic growth and possessed the strongest naval force that controlled the trade routes of the Aegean and the Mediterranean Sea. The Athenians became the natural leaders of all Greek city-states previously troubled by the Persians. In 478/7 BC, on the initiative of the Athenian general Aristides, the first Athenian alliance was formed. It was also known as the Delian League or Delian Union. The military successes of the alliance liberated all the Greek cities of Asia Minor from the Persians. With the creation of the alliance, Athens assumed a leading role. Within a few years, the city had become the absolute ruler and manager of the alliance's financial resources, which came from the taxation of its members. During Pericles' period, along with the city growth, this role was strengthened and the alliance was transformed into an Athenian hegemony. At the peak of its power, the alliance was dominant throughout the Aegean. It is known that there were about 400 members by 425 BC. The fall of Athens. During the glorious path of Athens, the city was in constant confrontation with the rival city-state in Greece, Sparta. Sparta was a warrior society. Spartan culture was centered on loyalty to the state and military service. At age 7, Spartan boys entered a rigorous state-sponsored education, military training, and socialization program. Known as the agoge, the system emphasized duty, discipline, and endurance. Although Spartan women were not active in the military, they were educated and enjoyed more status and freedom than other Greek women. Because Spartan men were professional soldiers, all manual labor was done by a slave class, the Ephialtes. During Athens' growth, Sparta had formed her own alliance, consisting of other city-states of the Peloponnesus, known as the Peloponnesian League. In 431 BC, one of the fiercest wars between the Greeks, known as the Peloponnesian War, broke out. The two rivals, Athens and Sparta, were the most powerful city-states in ancient Greece at the time. This war shifted power from Athens to Sparta, making Sparta the most powerful city-state in the region. The war lasted in total 27 years and featured two periods of combat separated by a 6-year truce, Peace of Nicaeas. The Peloponnesian War. Athens and Sparta were in constant conflict for decades. In 449 BC, Athens had signed the Treaty of Callias and had ended hostilities with Sparta. But one of Sparta's allies, Corinth, had directly engaged the Athenian army. As a Spartan ally, Corinth resumed hostilities toward Athens when Athens threatened Corinth's interests in the region surrounding Corcyra. This eventually drew Sparta into the conflict. The Spartan army began by raiding lands in Attica. The Athenians had built walls stretching from their seaport to the city of Athens. The walls helped protect Athens from direct assault, and Pericles urged Athens not to engage in direct land battles with the Spartans. Instead, the Athenians used their navy to deliver troops into the Spartan territory who conduct raids on settlements. After years of open warfare, Sparta offered peace and Athens accepted. The agreement was made official with the signing of the Peace of Nicaeas. The treaty stated that Athens and Sparta would defend each other for the next 50 years. However, the treaty only lasted 6. Hostilities resumed with an assault launched by the Athenians at Sicily. Sparta decided to retaliate. Learning from its past experiences with the Athenian navy, they established a fleet of warships. It would be another decade of warfare before the Spartan general Lysander defeated the Athenian fleet at Aegospotami. This defeat led to the Athenian surrender and the domination of Sparta in Greece. The rise of a new military force. The devastating confrontation with Sparta lasted 27 years, destroying both adversaries and ending in 404 BC with the Pyrrhic victory of Sparta. Pyrrhic victory is a victory that comes at the expense of great losses or costs. It literally means that the winner had to go through fire to succeed in his victory. During the Peloponnesian War, the Athenians continued their plans to invest in the Acropolis and managed to build the Erechtheion and the Temple of Athena Nike. However, the fierce confrontation between the two forces had a consequence neither had imagined: the rise of a new military force, Macedonia. Philip II, leader of the Kingdom of Macedonia, came to dominate Greece after a military victory over the Athenians at Chaeronea in 338 BC. In 336 BC, Philip was assassinated by his bodyguard Pausanias and was succeeded by his son, a student of Aristotle, Alexander the Great. In 334 BC, the Greeks under this charismatic general took full advantage of the Macedonian phalanx and began their legendary campaign that created one of the biggest empires of human history. If you want to extend your research, have a look to the description of the video for more links and sources. Did you like this video? Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to support our channel.